What is happening, baby? It's your boy Dallas Clark, also known as Nindo, and I'm back at you again with another Fantasy Football Huddle presented by the Huddle Chat Sports show. And I'm excited to be with y'all today. It's the most important episode of the week, the one that everybody pays the most attention to. It's the startums and situms of week 6 of the NFL and fantasy football season. Make sure you pay attention. All those bye weeks are coming up this week. And we also have those trade deadlines. They have to be coming around the corner. So these are your last few weeks to make trades. We're going to have some early trade targets as well to come out with here in the next couple of days. We're going to be starting to do that every week as well. So this is going to be our weekly episode of the startums and situms for week 6. And before we get cracked off right into the startums and situms, of course, now is the time that I ask you, if you do, there's no peer pressure. If you smoke them, now's the time that I invite you to smoke them if you got them, baby. Let's get it cracking. Let's get sparked off right, and let's get right into the news. So, of course, when I'm doing those startums and situms, it's important to keep in mind that these startums and situms, we're not going to be covering those Patrick Mahomes, Derrick Henrys, Travis Kelce's, Hollywood. We're not going to cover those obvious stardom players, those players that even in a bad matchup, you're going to start them. I mean, if you're looking at this episode and you're not starting Derrick Henry this week, you probably don't need to be watching the show anyway. You need a lot more help than that. So we're not going to be covering those obvious start situations. We're looking at those people that are going to be, questions. Do I start this player or this player? And the only time that I'll put in a star player is if it's in a sit list. We have a couple in here today. Now, let's get cracked off right. We're going to start off with those quarterbacks. My start of the week at the quarterback position this week is going to be Matty Ice, the new Matty Ice, not the old Matty Ice, Matthew Stafford from the Los Angeles Rams. He's playing the New York Giants this week. Matt Stafford, so far this season, has got 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. And the Giants have allowed 20-plus points to 3 different quarterbacks in their 5 matchups this season, and that's including Teddy Bridgewater and Taylor Heineke, who aren't really necessarily elite quarterbacks. They're not bad quarterbacks, but they're not in the elite tier of quarterbacks, not quarterbacks that you expect to put up 20-plus points, and that's in standard scoring where touchdowns are only worth 4 points, so that's even more. Now, another start that I got for you today is going to be Taylor Heineke from the Washington football team playing Kansas City. He scored 20-plus fantasy points per game in 3 of the 4 games that he's played in this year. That's more than Aaron Rodgers. I'm not saying that he's better than Aaron Rodgers, but in fantasy so far this season, he's been putting up more points than Aaron Rodgers. I don't know how y'all feel about that, man. He's got 40-plus rushing yards over the last 2 games, not combined, separately. 40 yards in each of the last 2 games. He's got that mobility, and you know how I like a mobile quarterback that can only make your quarterback stats look even nicer. Then when you're looking at his matchup, the Chiefs have allowed the most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks this season, and the Chiefs will probably be leading early and often in this game, so there's going to be a lot of junk time, garbage time passes for Taylor Heineke to be throwing. He's going to have to throw to keep the Washington football team in this game, so everything points to Taylor Heineke having a great week this week. Now, my sleeper quarterback that we're going with this week, a sleeper that I think if you're struggling through bye weeks, you're struggling through injuries right now, or you just need a week-long replacement, you don't have a good matchup for your quarterback this week, I'm looking at Carson Wentz. I mean, now y'all might convince me of being a homer, and I definitely am an Indianapolis Colts homer, but Carson Wentz this season, despite all the injuries, despite looking like Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, you're looking at Carson Wentz has already managed to put up at least 17 points per game in every game this season, and that's in standard scoring. If you're in a league where where quarterbacks are scoring 6 points per touchdown, Carson Wentz has put up 20-plus points in every game this season, and I mean, he's looking great. He's thrown the ball 31-plus times in every game this season, and he looked great on Monday night. The Colts defense, for how long they were on the field, did not look so great in the second half, but Carson Wentz looked great on Monday night. There were a lot of other issues with the Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz is not to blame. For all you Colts fans out there that are saying that these struggles the Colts are going through are Carson Wentz's issues, I strongly encourage you to go back and actually watch the games. So obviously you're just watching highlights or something. You're not actually watching these football games. because Carson Wentz has been balling. Then you're also looking at the matchup against Houston. It's so favorable. Houston's allowed 3 quarterbacks to score 19 plus points on them this season. They also rank in the bottom 10 in air yards per target and completion percentage against them. So they're allowing quarterbacks to do the damn thing, and Carson Wentz is going to have his 6th straight week of 17 plus points in standard scoring. Now looking at quarterbacks that I'm staying away from this week, you're looking at Ryan Tannehill from the Tennessee Titans. That's my sit of the week for quarterback. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, I don't know what happened. Somehow, some evil villain out there secretly replaced the Miami Dolphins, Ryan Tannehill, with the Tennessee Titans, Ryan Tannehill, and they got Miami Ryan back, and it's just not looking good. Ryan Tannehill was being drafted somewhere around quarterback 7 in most leagues this season. He's right now quarterback 21. We're looking at, he has 1 game with multiple touchdown passes. You see how Derrick Henry's been playing. And then the matchup against Buffalo. Buffalo has allowed the fewest points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season. Nothing in the world is going to make me start Ryan Tannehill. Another quarterback that I'm going to be staying away from this week is going to be Kirk the Jerk Cousins. I don't like that. He scored 11.8 points over the past 2 games as an average. He's put up 2 touchdowns in his last 72 pass attempts. He struggled against the Detroit Lions defense that Mitchell High School could probably run through right now. Carolina, the Panthers are allowing a league low 161 passing yards a game against them, and allowing a completion rate percentage of 58%. So they're shutting quarterbacks down out there in Carolina, and Kirk Cousins has not been getting it done against shitty defenses. I definitely do not want to plug Kirk Cousins in this week on my team. Now, moving on from the quarterbacks, we're going to the money players, the running backs, the wide receivers, those gold coins out there. Now, my start of the week at running back is going to be Darrell Henderson from the Los Angeles Rams playing against the New York Giants. I mean, he's averaged 96 scrimmage yards per game so far this season. He's the clear lead back in Los Angeles right now, and he's getting at least 16 points per game in standard scoring in every game this season that he's played. As far as the matchup goes, you're looking at the New York Giants. They've allowed the 3rd most rushing yards per game and the 3rd most rushing yards per carry in the NFL this season. The matchup looks great. He's playing great. He's the obvious lead back. Plug Darrell Henderson in your lineups this week and be confident about it. Another running back that I'm going with this week, happily, is DeAndre Swift from the Detroit Lions. I'm getting Swifty. He's got a near even rotation with Jamal Williams right now, and that's the one thing that kind of frustrates DeAndre Swift owners, is that he's in that near even rotation. I feel like he's being more efficient. I don't just feel that way, but the points are saying that way. He's being more efficient on a points per touch basis. Jamal Williams is scoring about 0.6 points per touch, while DeAndre Swift, every time he touches the ball, is looking at 1.2 points per touch. So he's being more efficient as far as fantasy football goes. Jamal Williams has been getting a lot more of the goal line carries thus far, being more of the power back. But I think as the year goes on, the season gets later in, I think they're just trying to keep DeAndre Swift healthy right now, sort of like the Cowboys are doing with Ezekiel Elliott, like we talked about in the What We Learned episode yesterday on the Week 5. So I definitely think that, excuse me, you're looking at the startability is going to be solely in his matchup because he's not getting that clear lead back role like Darrell Henderson is. Cincinnati has allowed the 14 points per game to 3 different running backs in 5 games that they played, and that's including 2 different 20-point performances. Let me say that again for you. Cincinnati has allowed 3 different running backs in their 5 games to score 14 plus points, and 2 of those 3 have scored 20 plus points. He's in high-end RB2, and I plug him into my lineup this week extremely happily, especially with all these injuries that are going on. My sleeper running back for y'all this week is going to be Zach Moss from the Buffalo Bills, and that's why he's a sleeper. He's taking over as the lead back from Devin Singletary. Devin Singletary hasn't really been doing much of anything, and I'm sorry to tell you, Devin Singletary owners, this might be the time to start considering what you're going to do with Devin Singletary because it's not going to be plugging him into your lineup. Zach Moss has taken over a 27% target share in the last 2 games. He's got 7 red zone looks as opposed to the 1 red zone look that Devin Singletary has gotten. And Tennessee, the matchup with Tennessee is amazing. You're looking at Tennessee's allowed 14 plus points per game to 4 of the 5 running backs that they've played this season, and they're allowing 4.7 yards per carry. The matchup looks great, and I also think the game script for them looks amazing as well. Buffalo is going to be out to a big lead early this game, so I think that they're going to be able to run a lot of garbage time runs. For Zach Moss, I definitely plug in Zach Moss if you have him on your lineup. I'm looking at running backs that I'm going to sit this week. Josh Jacobs, he's probably my sit of the week at running back. He's had a rough year so far. I mean, probably one of the most disappointing performances of all fantasy football players, but there's one person on this list today that I think has been a bigger bust. He's got less than 50 rushing yards and less than 70 scrimmage yards in all 3 games that he's played this season. His production is just not there right now. He eventually may be a breakout candidate, but I don't think this week is going to be that week. Unfortunately, it's very unlikely against the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos are a stout defense. They're allowing the 2nd fewest yards per game to running backs this season. It's not a great matchup for Josh Jacobs. I don't think game script falls in his lap very well. Josh Jacobs, avoid him if you can. Another sit that I'm staying away from this week is going to be Alex Collins from Seattle, looking at Pittsburgh. You might want to plug him into your lineups with Chris Carson potentially not playing, but even if Chris Carson doesn't play, I'm sitting Alex Collins. Pittsburgh hasn't allowed a running back to score more than 11.6 points this season at all. There's no Russell Wilson, which means that the defense is going to be able to key on the run. They don't have to worry about Russell Wilson. You got Geno Smith back at quarterback. So I think that Alex Collins is going to get shut down, and they're going to try to force Geno Smith to beat them, which I doubt that Geno Smith will be able to beat them. And then another running back that I'm staying away from this week, I actually almost don't even need to talk about him. Damian Harris I had on my sit list, but he's looking like he might not play this week. I had it that he was at less than 100% against a really tough defense against Dallas. And then he suffered through those chest and rib injuries. Like I said, we don't really have to talk about Damian Harris. You shouldn't be starting him anyway. Now that the news has come out that he's going to be injured and most likely not playing this week, but he was on the sit list no matter what. Now, going on to the pass catchers, the wide receivers. My start of the week at wide receiver, I had a hard time picking between these two, and I'm honestly we're just going to put them both. Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool from the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're an owner of either one of those, congratulations. This is the week that you're looking for a breakout. I actually like Deontay Johnson a little bit more than Chase Claypool this week. With Juju Smith-Schuster out for the year, you're looking at 6th most fantasy points per game allowed to wide receiver from Seattle. And they're also 2nd most allowed yards to wide receivers over there in Seattle as well this year. That Seattle secondary is tragic. I also look at this Pittsburgh offense. It's been clear that this Pittsburgh offense doesn't have the strength, it doesn't have the backbone to support 3 elite wide receivers. So with Juju Smith out of the way, I think Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson are going to be able to flourish because they're not trying to feed all those mouths. But you're also looking at Deontay Johnson. He had an issue with dropping passes last year, and he's really not been having that same issue this year. He's been catching the ball and doing something with it. He's got at least 100 yards or a touchdown in every game this season. Deontay Johnson has been making the most of his opportunities, and 7 wide receivers have scored 16 plus points on Seattle. That's why we're starting Chase Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster. Like I said, the Seattle secondary is putrid. It's no longer the Legion of Boom that it used to be. So if you got either Deontay Johnson or Chase Claypool, start that ass this week. Another wide receiver that I'm looking at to start this week. I mean, call me a homer if you want, but my boy Mike Pittman Jr. I don't even want to call him Mike Pittman Jr. I just want to call him Mike Pittman because he's a grown-ass man. The way he played on Monday Night Football, I mean, as a Colts fan, I absolutely loved it. He's wide receiver 14 over the past 4 weeks. He's got 6 receptions, 6+ receptions, at least 6 receptions in the last 4 games. He's been a wide receiver. Okay. Wide receivers so far this season against Houston average 8 receptions per contest, and 4 separate wide receivers have scored 17.8 plus points on Houston. So you're looking at with the matchup this week, plus Michael Pittman's getting that better rapport with Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is playing better. If I've got Carson Wentz in my starting lineup, you might as well go ahead and put Michael Pittman in there as well if you have him. My sleeper wide receiver to start this week is going to be Laviska Shenault from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Miami gives up the 5th most points per game to wide receivers, and Miami is also allowing the most points per game to the slot position, which is where Laviska Shenault runs most of his routes out of. I think this is going to be a big game for Laviska Shenault, especially with DJ Chark going out last week. You're looking at Laviska Shenault's going to be able to flourish. So if you have him, now's the week to throw him in your flex spot. Now, pass catchers I'm sitting away from. Sit of the week. This one's more of a warning than a true sit, just because it's going to be hard to sit this man with 4 different teams on a bye this week. But if you have the ability, if you're fortunate enough to be kind of bountiful at wide receiver, I'm staying away from A.J. Brown this week. God dang, man. A.J. Brown's been disappointing. You're looking at fewer than 50 yards in every game that he's played this season. Ryan Tannehill has been playing absolutely putridly lately. Cornerback Tre'Davious White has been shutting opposing wide receivers down, and so has that Bills offense. They've allowed no receiver to produce more than 76 yards, and that's a list that's including Tyreek Hill, Scary Terry, Deontay Johnson, and Brandon Cooks. That's just including those wide receivers. No wide receiver has put up more than 76 yards on that Buffalo Bills defense. And like I said, it's going to be more of a warning. I mean, you can't really sit A.J. Brown with 4 teams on a bye, but if you have that ability, stay away from A.J. Brown. Don't expect a big game from him this week. Another wide receiver that I'm staying away from is going to be Odell Beckham Jr. from Cleveland. God, man, I mean, Odell Beckham, how the fall from grace he had, man. Cleveland threw for more than 300 yards in their 42-point performance last week. Odell Beckham had 2 catches for 20 yards. I mean, what more can you say about that? I mean, that's without Jarvis Landry at 100%. OBJ has caught 47% of the targets that he's had thrown to him this season. He's been not as efficient as he used to be. And he's playing against the Arizona Cardinals, who are allowing 101 yards per game to opposing wide receivers. And then another sit that I've got for you this week is going to be Allen Robinson, who I think might be the biggest bust of fantasy football this season. I was big on Allen Robinson coming into the year, especially after Justin Fields took over. But that has been the exact opposite case. It's getting to the point you might want to sit Allen Robinson all the way down to the waiver wire. You're looking at he's failed to produce. I mean, the Bears have thrown literally 35% of the time, which is a league low since Justin Fields took over. They're not even throwing the ball. Justin Fields is not playing quarterback as well as I thought he would. And Allen Robinson he's not doing anything. The Bears wasted their time re-signing Allen Robinson. They should have let him come somewhere like Indianapolis. He would have flourished out there. But if you have Allen Robinson, and you can, I'm sitting him this week. Now, moving on to the tight ends, I just got 2 quick ones for you. I'm looking at Dalton Schultz from the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, you got to start Dalton Schultz at this point. I mean, it's almost to the point where Dalton Schultz is almost a sit-it-and-forget-it type tight end. He's top 5 in fantasy points per game, receptions, and yards at the tight end position. He's got twice as many routes as Blake Jarwin, and that was the one thing that was holding people back from Dalton Schultz was Blake Jarwin was in the way. He's got 7+ targets in the last three straight games and at least 10.5 points per game in four of the 5 games that he's played in the season, including 13+ points in the last 3 straight games. I think that this is going to be a big week for Dalton Schultz, and it's time to plug him in your lineup and damn near set it and forget it. And then last on the list is going to be the last tight end on my list today. We're going to be sitting. We're going to be looking over at Robert Tonyan from the Green Bay Packers. I'm sitting Robert Tonyan. He's a very touchdown-dependent tight end who hasn't really found pay dirt very often this season. Just one time this season, he's got a 10.6% target share. Like I said, he only has one game this season with more than 4 targets. And the Bears have a great defense against tight ends. They're allowing 1 touchdown and the top 7 in the fewest points, yards, and receptions to tight ends. The matchup is not favorable. His target share is not favorable, and Robert Tonyan is just flat out not that good. So definitely stay away from Robert Tonyan this week. But that's going to be doing it for me today here over on the Huddle Chat Sports Show, Fantasy Football Huddle. Thank y'all so much yet again, for tuning in with me today. Make sure you guys stay tuned. I got a lot of trade targets coming up. I've got my shadow report with all my good and bad matchups for the week. And we're going to be setting my lineup on Sunday morning. I'm going to help you guys with any last minute questions that you may have. So please make sure if you've got any trade questions, any lineup questions, any waiver wire questions, drop that down in the comments. Make sure if you haven't already, you hit that like button over here, subscribe to the channel, and let me know if you need any help with your fantasy football team. I love answering those questions, and I'm here for you to help you win all that money in your fantasy football league and leave all those other suckers in the dust. Like I said, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your boy, Dallas Clark, host of the Huddle Chat Sports Show, Fantasy Football Huddle, and I'm going to see y'all next time. I'm the fuck up out of here, baby. Y'all have a good one.